The crimson sun dipped below the rolling hills of Misty Creek, Wyoming, casting long shadows over Olivia Keller's battered canvas as tears blurred her vision. The year was 1877, and she had just been publicly humiliated for the third time this month at the town's small gallery, gathering her landscapes and portraits of frontier life, dismissed as frivolous women's scribbles by the self-appointed art critics of their dusty settlement. "You'll never sell a single one," Martha Wilkins had declared with cruel certainty, her voice carrying across the small room where Olivia's work hung temporarily. "No one wants paintings from a spinster who can't even afford proper pigments." Olivia gathered her courage and remaining dignity along with her paintings, carefully wrapping each one in the clean cloth she had brought. At 24, she was already considered past her prime for marriage in these parts, but it wasn't a husband she yearned for, it was recognition of the beauty she saw in this harsh land. The gallery owner, Mr. Peterson, approached with an uncomfortable expression. "Miss Keller, perhaps next time you might consider bringing your needlework instead. Ladies' handiwork always sells better then." He gestured vaguely at her wrapped canvases. "These aren't attempts, Mr. Peterson. They're paintings my vision of our world." Olivia's voice trembled slightly, but she stood tall. "And I'll bring them again next month." Outside, the late summer heat pressed down on Misty Creek like a wool blanket. Olivia loaded her rejected artwork onto the small wagon she'd borrowed from her neighbor. Her home was a modest cabin on the edge of town, inherited from her father who died 2 years prior. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and the rear room with its northern light made a perfect studio. As she prepared to climb onto the wagon seat, a deep voice called out, "Miss Keller." Turning, Olivia found herself looking up at Blake Young, one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. His 6-foot frame cast a long shadow, Stetson pulled low over eyes the color of Wyoming sky. At 30, Blake was considered one of the most eligible bachelors in 3 counties, though he rarely came to town except for supplies or business. "Mr. Young," she acknowledged with a polite nod, suddenly conscious of the paint stains on her skirts. "I missed the showing," he said, glancing at her wrapped canvases. "Came in too late." "You didn't miss much," Olivia replied, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just the usual disappointment." Blake's expression darkened. "I heard some of the comments as I was walking in. Folks around here wouldn't know real art if it bucked them off a horse." Surprised by his defense, Olivia studied him more carefully. Blake Young was known as a hard-working, fair man, but not one given to discussions of art or beauty. His hands were calloused from ranch work, his face weathered by sun and wind. "You're interested in art, Mr. Young?" she asked, genuine curiosity replacing her embarrassment. "My mother was a painter," he said simply. "Had a room full of canvases back in Boston before we came west." A shadow crossed his face. "Lost most of them in a fire some years back. A passing wagon kicked up dust, momentarily obscuring them both. When it cleared, Blake seemed to have made a decision. Miss Keller, would you allow me to see your work, properly I mean? With good light and without those vultures pecking at it." The request was so unexpected that Olivia found herself nodding before she'd fully considered it. "I suppose. Yes, if you truly wish to, though I warn you, they're nothing special according to most. I'd like to judge for myself, if you don't mind." His smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines carved by years of outdoor work. They arranged for him to visit her cabin the following afternoon. As Olivia drove home, she found herself both nervous and strangely hopeful. It had been so long since anyone had shown genuine interest in her art. The next day, Olivia spent the morning frantically cleaning her small cabin and arranging her paintings in the best light. She had nearly 30 completed works landscapes of the rolling Wyoming prairie, portraits of townspeople who occasionally agreed to sit for her, and scenes of daily life in the West that she found compelling. Blake arrived precisely when promised, hitching his horse to the small post outside. He'd cleaned up. She noticed his usual ranch clothes replaced by a pressed shirt and his best denims, hair slicked back with water. "Thank you for allowing me to visit, Miss Keller," he said, removing his hat as he stepped through the doorway. "Please call me Olivia," she offered, suddenly shy. "Would you care for some tea, Blake?" he returned with a nod. "And yes, thank you." Once the formalities were observed, Olivia led him to her studio space. She'd arranged the paintings around the room, some on easels, others propped against the walls. Blake moved slowly from one to another, saying nothing, his expression intense as he studied each piece. The silence stretched until Olivia couldn't bear it. "You don't need to be polite, Mr. Young Blake. I know they're amateur efforts." He turned to her with genuine surprise. "Amateur?" "Miss Keller, Olivia, these are extraordinary." He gestured to a landscape showing the mountains at sunset, the light catching the distant snow peaks. "You've captured exactly how it looks when the day is ending and that last light hits the range. I've seen that 1,000 times from my land, but never thought how to preserve it." He moved to another, painting a portrait of Old Man Jenkins, who ran the general store. "And this you've shown every line in his face, but also the kindness in his eyes that most folks miss because they're too busy complaining about his prices." One by one, Blake examined each painting, offering specific, thoughtful observations about each. Olivia followed, astonishment growing with every comment. He wasn't being polite, he genuinely understood what she was trying to achieve. "This one," he said finally, stopping before a small canvas she'd nearly hidden behind others. It showed a lone rider on the prairie during a storm, lightning illuminating the distance, the horse and rider leaning into the wind. "This one speaks to me." "It's not finished," Olivia said apologetically. "I couldn't get the lighting right." "It's perfect as it is," Blake insisted. "It shows how it feels to be out there small against the sky but still pushing forward." He turned to face her directly. "Olivia, would you sell it to me?" She blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Sell it to you, yes, name your price. But it's not even complete. And no one has ever wanted to buy one of my paintings before." Blake's blue eyes held her steadily. "Then they're fools. I want this one and maybe others if you're willing." Stunned, Olivia named a modest sum, which Blake immediately doubled. Before she could protest, he continued, "Art has value, Olivia, real value, and I'd be honored to have your work in my home." As the afternoon light faded, they sat at her small kitchen table, discussing art, ranching, and life in the West. Blake spoke of his journey from Boston 15 years earlier, how his father had claimed land and built a successful cattle operation before passing it to his only son 5 years ago. "I've added to it since then," he said modestly. "Got about 5,000 acres now, good grazing land and a decent house. Nothing fancy, but solid." Olivia shared her own story, how her father had brought her west after her mother died, hoping the frontier would offer better opportunities than their struggling farm in Pennsylvania. He'd opened a small harness shop in Misty Creek, making just enough to keep them comfortable until his heart gave out 2 winters ago. "The shop's gone now," she explained. "I sold it to pay some debts, but kept the cabin. I give drawing lessons to a few children, and I do some sewing work for folks in town." "And you paint," Blake added. "You create beauty where most just see emptiness." His gaze was warm, appreciative in a way that made Olivia's cheeks flush. When Blake finally left, the painting carefully wrapped and secured to his saddle, Olivia stood in her doorway watching until he disappeared around the bend. Something had shifted in her world. Someone had truly seen her work, valued it, believed in it. The feeling was as intoxicating as it was unfamiliar. 3 days later, Blake returned. This time, he purchased 2 more paintings, a view of the creek at dawn and a small study of wildflowers. Again, he paid more than she asked, and again they spent hours in conversation that ranged far beyond art. The pattern continued throughout September. Every few days, Blake would ride into town ostensibly on ranch business, but always finding time to visit Olivia's cabin. Each time he left with another painting. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal. He spoke of his dreams for the ranch. She shared her hopes of someday traveling to see the great art of Europe. In town, people began to notice. Gossip spread like wildfire in a dry summer. "That spinster Keller has set her cap for Blake Young," the whispers went. "Using her silly paintings to trap the richest man in the county." Olivia tried to ignore the talk, but it stung, especially when some of the women who'd been friendliest began to cool toward her. Even Mr. Peterson at the gallery seemed distant when she visited to purchase supplies. "Blake, people are talking," she finally confided during one of his visits in early October. "They think that I'm trying to." She couldn't finish the sentence, embarrassment heating her face. Blake's expression hardened. "Let them talk. What do I care for their small minds?" He reached for her hand across the table, the first time he'd touched her beyond the most formal contact. "Olivia, do you think that's why I'm buying your paintings? As some kind of charity?" "No," she answered honestly. "You understand them too well for that, but others don't see what you see." "Then perhaps they should be shown." Blake's eyes lit with sudden inspiration. "The Harvest Festival is in 2 weeks. Everyone from 3 counties will be there. What if we displayed your work? Let people see what I see." Fear clutched at Olivia's heart. The last public showing went so poorly. Because it was the wrong audience, presented the wrong way. Blake's enthusiasm was building. "Trust me, Olivia, I have an idea." Against her better judgment, Olivia agreed. For the next 2 weeks, she painted feverishly while Blake made arrangements. He was mysterious about the details, saying only that he wanted it to be a surprise. All she knew was that he'd secured space at the festival grounds and would collect her remaining paintings the day before the event. The morning of the festival dawned clear and crisp, perfect autumn weather. Olivia dressed in her best blue dress, the one that matched her eyes, spending extra time arranging her chestnut hair. Whatever happened today, she was determined to face it with dignity. Blake arrived at her cabin early, looking handsome in a new suit. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. The festival was already busy when they arrived. Farmers displayed their best produce, craftsmen showed their wares, and food stalls filled the air with delicious smells. Blake led Olivia past all of this toward a small building at the edge of the grounds, the schoolhouse, temporarily cleared for the occasion. Outside, a sign proclaimed, "Wyoming Visions, the art of Olivia Keller." Olivia stopped short, her heart pounding. "Blake, what have you done?" His smile was both proud and slightly nervous. "Given your work the showcase it deserves. Come see." Inside, Olivia gasped. The schoolroom had been transformed. Clean white cloths draped the walls, her paintings hung with care in perfect light from the windows. Each had a small card beside it with a title and, to her shock, a price far higher than she would have dared ask. "Blake, these prices are fair," he finished firmly. "I consulted with a dealer in Cheyenne. Your work is worth every penny and more." Before she could respond, the first festival goers began to trickle in. To Olivia's amazement, they moved through the exhibit with genuine interest. Some were just curious, but others engaged, asking questions about her techniques and inspirations. By midday, the small building was crowded. Olivia found herself surrounded by people, explaining her work, receiving compliments, and most incredibly selling paintings. Blake stayed close, watching with obvious satisfaction as red, sold markers appeared beside piece after piece. Not everyone was impressed, of course. Martha Wilkins and her circle made a point of walking through with pinched faces and audible sniffs. "I don't see the appeal myself," Martha declared loudly. "Anyone could splash paint around like that." Blake, overhearing, stepped smoothly into their path. "Mrs. Wilkins, isn't it? I'd be fascinated to see your artistic efforts sometime. Perhaps at next year's festival." The woman sputtered and retreated, her friends trailing behind. By sunset, 3/4 of Olivia's paintings had sold. She stood in wonderment, counting the money in her apron pocket, more than she'd earned in the past year from all her other work combined. "I can't believe it," she whispered to Blake as they prepared to close the exhibit. "How did you know this would happen?" "Because your work deserves to be seen," he said simply. "And because I believe in you, Olivia Keller." The way he said her name made her breath catch. In the golden light of the setting sun streaming through the schoolhouse windows, Blake looked at her with such intensity that the rest of the room seemed to fade away. "There's something else I wanted to show you," he said softly. "Can you come to the ranch tomorrow? I've been working on a surprise." Curious and still flying high from the day's success, Olivia agreed. Blake arranged to send his ranch hand with a buggy for her the following morning, as it was too far for her to walk. That night, Olivia could barely sleep. The day had been transformative not just financially, but in how she viewed herself and her art. People had seen value in her work, had wanted to own pieces of her vision. And Blake, the way he'd looked at her. The buggy arrived promptly at 10 the next morning. The ranch hand, a friendly young man named Joe, chatted easily during the hour-long drive to Blake's property. As they crested a hill, Olivia caught her first glimpse of the young ranch, far more impressive than Blake's modest descriptions had suggested. A large 2-story house of solid timber stood proudly on a rise, surrounded by well-kept outbuildings. Fenced pastures stretched in all directions, dotted with healthy cattle. A creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods just beginning to turn gold with autumn. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed. "Boss has done well with it," Joe agreed proudly. "Hardest working man I know." Blake was waiting on the porch as they pulled up, his smile wide and welcoming. He helped Olivia down from the buggy, his hands lingering slightly at her waist. "Welcome to Horizon Ranch," he said. "I hope the ride wasn't too uncomfortable." "It was lovely," she assured him. "Your land is magnificent, Blake. I can see why you love it." He showed her around the main house first, a surprisingly elegant home with comfortable furnishings and large windows that framed the spectacular views. The kitchen was modern and well-equipped, opening onto a dining room with a table that could seat 12. "My mother insisted on bringing some civilization with us when we came west," Blake explained. "She made sure this house had all the comforts she'd left behind in Boston." "She had excellent taste," Olivia observed, running her hand along a beautifully carved sideboard. Blake's expression softened with memory. "She did. She would have loved you, Olivia, would have loved your art even more." He led her through the house, showing each room with obvious pride, but also a hint of nervousness, as if seeking her approval. Finally, they reached a closed door at the end of the upstairs hallway. "This is what I wanted to show you," Blake said, his hand on the doorknob. "I hope you don't think it too forward." He opened the door, and Olivia stepped into the room, then froze in astonishment. It was a large, bright space with windows on 2 sides, and every available wall space was covered with her paintings. Every single one he had purchased over the past weeks hung in perfect arrangement, the afternoon light bringing the colors to vivid life. "Blake," she whispered, overwhelmed. "I know it seems excessive," he said, suddenly self-conscious. "But I wanted to live surrounded by your vision. Each one speaks to me in a different way." Olivia moved slowly around the room, touching the frames, remembering the creation of each piece. In this setting, arranged with such care and bathed in perfect light, they looked better than she'd ever seen them. Even the flaws she knew were there seemed less important somehow. "The lightning one," she noted, stopping before the first painting he'd purchased. "You hung it in the center." "It was the beginning," Blake said simply, coming to stand beside her. "The first time I saw how you really view our world." Olivia turned to face him, finding him much closer than she'd realized. "No one has ever valued my work the way you do. No one has ever seen me the way you do." Blake's eyes, so blue and earnest, held hers. "From the first moment I saw your paintings, I knew you were special, Olivia. You see beauty where others see only dirt and struggle. You find meaning in small moments that most people overlook." He took her hands in his touch gentle despite the calluses. "The truth is, I didn't just fall in love with your art. I fell in love with the woman who creates it, with your passion, your determination, your gentle heart." Olivia's breath caught. "Blake." "I know it's sudden," he continued hurriedly, "and I'm not asking for promises yet, but I wanted you to see this, to see that I treasure what you create, that I treasure you." Tears blurred Olivia's vision, but they were tears of joy, not sadness. For so long she had felt unseen, her talents dismissed, her dreams ridiculed. Now this man, this strong, kind man, was telling her he valued not just her art, but her heart. "I don't think it's sudden at all," she said softly. "I think perhaps we've been finding our way to each other from the moment you walked into my studio." Blake's smile was radiant. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, a gentle, questioning kiss that Olivia returned with growing certainty. His arms encircled her, strong and protective, and she melted against him, feeling for the first time that she had found her true home. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Blake rested his forehead against hers. "Stay for dinner?" he asked. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, has been cooking all day, hoping you'd accept." "I'd love to," Olivia agreed, her heart too full for more elaborate words. Over a delicious meal, they talked of everything and nothing, their childhoods, their dreams, the books they loved. Blake spoke of his plans to expand the ranch's breeding program, while Olivia shared her ideas for new painting series focused on the women of the frontier, whose stories often went untold. "You should do it," Blake encouraged. "After yesterday's success, you could probably get commissions." "Perhaps," Olivia mused, still adjusting to the idea that people would pay for her art. "Though I'm not sure I want to paint only what others request. There's so much I want to capture in my own way." "Then capture it," Blake said simply. "Paint what moves you, Olivia. The right people will see its value." As the evening grew late, Blake reluctantly mentioned that it was time for Joe to take her home. "Though nothing would make me happier than to have you stay," he added, his eyes conveying deeper meaning. Olivia blushed. "We should observe some proprieties, Mr. Young, at least for now." His laugh was warm. "Always proper, Miss Keller. It's one of the many things I adore about you." He helped her into the buggy, kissing her once more before stepping back. "I'll come to town tomorrow," he promised. "There's much more I want to show you here." "I'll be waiting," she replied, her heart singing with newfound joy. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Olivia's life. Blake visited town frequently, sometimes taking her back to the ranch, other times simply spending hours at her cabin, talking and planning. News of their courtship spread through Misty Creek, generating both congratulations and jealousy. Martha Wilkins and her circle were particularly bitter, having always hoped one of their daughters might catch Blake's eye. "He'll tire of her soon enough," Martha predicted sourly at a church social. "Men like Blake Young don't marry penniless artists." Unfortunately, Olivia overheard the comment as she was arranging refreshments nearby. Before she could decide how to respond, Blake's voice cut through the chatter. "Actually, Mrs. Wilkins," he said, approaching with 2 cups of punch, "men like me marry exactly whom we please. And I happen to find artistic talent far more attractive than idle gossip." He handed Olivia a cup, his smile unchanged but his eyes blazing with protective anger. The encounter circulated through town within hours, effectively silencing the worst of the critics. Late October brought an early cold snap, with frost silvering the ground each morning. Olivia found the crisp air invigorating, inspiring new paintings with deeper, richer colors that captured the changing season. Blake commissioned a series of landscapes showing his ranch through the seasons, insisting on paying her professional rates despite her protests. "You wouldn't ask the blacksmith to shoe your horses for free because you care for him," he pointed out reasonably. "Your art is your profession, Olivia." "I respect that." On a particularly beautiful Sunday in early November, Blake invited Olivia to ride with him to a special spot on his property. Mrs. Finch packed them a picnic lunch, and Blake saddled his gentlest mare for Olivia, who was still somewhat nervous around horses. They rode for nearly an hour, climbing steadily through pine-covered hills behind the main ranch house. Finally, they emerged onto a small plateau that offered a breathtaking panorama. The entire valley spread before them, the ranch buildings tiny in the distance, mountains rising majestically on the horizon. "Oh, Blake," Olivia breathed, dismounting with his help. "This is spectacular." "I come here to think," he said, spreading a blanket on a flat rock warmed by the sun. "When decisions need making or when the world seems too complicated." They ate lunch overlooking the vista, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories. When the food was gone, Blake grew uncharacteristically quiet, his gaze distant. "Is everything all right?" Olivia asked, touching his arm gently. He turned to her, his expression serious but tender. "I brought you here for a reason, Olivia. This is my favorite place in the world, or it was, until I met you." He took her hands in his. "These past weeks have been the happiest of my life. You've brought color and light into my world in ways I never imagined possible. Not just with your paintings, but with your spirit, your laughter, your gentle heart." Blake slid from the blanket onto one knee before her, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. "Olivia Grace Keller, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" He opened the box to reveal a ring not ostentatious but exquisitely beautiful. A deep blue sapphire surrounded by small diamonds in a silver setting. Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "Blake, I know it's fast," he said quickly. "If you need time, no," she interrupted, smiling through her tears. "I don't need time, I need you. Yes, Blake Young, yes, I will marry you." Blake's face transformed with joy. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, then rose to pull her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion he'd been restraining during their proper courtship. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Blake gestured to the view before them. "I thought we might build here someday. A new house, designed exactly as we want it, with a studio for you with windows on 3 sides to catch the perfect light." Olivia's heart swelled at his thoughtfulness. "You do that for me. I'd do anything for you," he said simply. "But this would be for us a home we create together, like a painting we both contribute to." They spent the afternoon on the plateau, planning their future, dreaming aloud. As the sun began to dip toward the mountains, they reluctantly mounted their horses for the ride back, Olivia frequently glancing at her ring, still hardly believing this wasn't a wonderful dream. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Misty Creek. Most reactions were positive. Blake was well respected, and Olivia's recent artistic success had elevated her standing considerably. There were some snide comments, of course, primarily from the disappointed mothers of eligible daughters, but these were largely ignored. They set the wedding date for the first Saturday in December, soon enough to satisfy their hearts, yet allowing time for proper preparations. Blake insisted that Olivia order fabric for a new wedding dress from Cheyenne rather than making do with her Sunday best, and he arranged for a real wedding cake to be sent from the city as well. "Nothing but the best for my bride," he declared when she protested the expense. November passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia continued painting, finding that happiness enhanced rather than diminished her creative drive. Blake divided his time between ranch work and wedding preparations, determined that everything would be perfect for their day. 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. A sudden blizzard swept through the region, burying Misty Creek under 2 feet of snow and cutting off the mountain passes to Cheyenne. Olivia's dress fabric, trapped in a stalled train, wouldn't arrive in time. The cake was similarly delayed, along with several other wedding necessities. Blake rode through the storm to Olivia's cabin as soon as the worst had passed, nearly frozen but determined to assure her all would be well. "We can postpone," he suggested, warming his hands by her fire. "Wait until spring when the weather's more reliable. And wait 3 more months to be your wife." Olivia shook her head firmly. "Not a chance, Blake Young. We'll marry on December 5th as planned, even if I have to wear my painting smock and we eat beans for our wedding supper." Blake's laugh warmed the room better than any fire. "Have I told you lately how much I love you, Olivia Keller? You have, but I never tire of hearing it." The town rallied around them. Mrs. Jenkins, the storekeeper's wife, offered her own wedding dress, preserved for 30 years in lavender and still in beautiful condition. It needed only slight alterations to fit Olivia perfectly. The church ladies organized a community feast to replace the delayed catering, while the schoolchildren created decorations under their teacher's guidance. "It's not the grand affair we planned," Blake apologized as they finalized the revised arrangements. "It's better," Olivia assured him. "It's a wedding that shows who we really are and how much this community means to us." December 5th dawned clear and cold. The world outside transformed into a glistening wonderland of snow and ice. Olivia dressed in Mrs. Jenkins' ivory satin gown, which complemented her chestnut hair and blue eyes beautifully. For her, something new, she wore Blake's sapphire ring. For something borrowed, Mrs. Jenkins' delicate veil. For something blue, a ribbon at her waist dyed with indigo from her own painting supplies. And for something old, her mother's locket containing a tiny portrait of her parents on their wedding day. The small church was packed with well-wishers. Even Martha Wilkins attended, her perpetual sourness softened somewhat by the romance of the occasion. Blake waited at the altar, handsome in a new suit, his eyes never leaving Olivia as she walked down the aisle on the arm of old man Jenkins, who had offered to stand in for her late father. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promising love and fidelity through all life's joys and challenges. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Blake's kiss was both tender and possessive, drawing good-natured cheers from the congregation. The reception in the church hall was far from the elegant affair originally planned, but somehow more meaningful. Townspeople had contributed their best dishes, creating a feast that represented the community's diverse backgrounds. Someone produced a fiddle, another a harmonica, and soon dancing began, with Blake and Olivia leading the first waltz. "Are you happy, Mrs. Young?" Blake whispered as they moved across the floor. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. "And you, Mr. Young? Any regrets about marrying your artist?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner," he replied, pulling her closer. "We have a lifetime to make up for it, though." Later that night, after the celebrations ended, Blake drove Olivia home, not to her cabin, but to Horizon Ranch, now their shared home. He carried her across the threshold in the traditional manner, both of them laughing with joy. In their bedroom, now truly theirs, Blake had hung a new painting. One Olivia had secretly created as a wedding gift for him. It showed the view from the plateau where he'd proposed, but with an addition: a beautiful home nestled among the trees, smoke curling from its chimney, promising warmth and love within. "It's our future," she explained softly. "The one we'll build together." "It's perfect," Blake murmured, drawing her into his arms. "Just like you." That night, as snow fell softly outside their windows, Blake and Olivia began their married life with passionate tenderness, each discovery a delight, each touch a promise of the years to come. Winter settled fully over Wyoming, but the young household remained warm and vibrant. Olivia set up her studio in the morning room temporarily, while Blake began drawing plans for their new home on the plateau. They fell into an easy rhythm together, Blake managing the ranch during the day while Olivia painted, then sharing evening meals where they discussed everything from cattle prices to color theory. In January, exciting news arrived. A gallery owner from Denver had seen Olivia's work at the Harvest Festival and wanted to display several pieces in his establishment. This opportunity meant exposure to a much wider audience, including wealthy patrons from the East who summered in Colorado. "You should go to Denver with them," Blake encouraged. "Make connections, meet other artists." "Leave you," Olivia protested. "We've barely been married a month." "It would only be for a week or two," Blake reasoned. "And it's a chance to establish yourself beyond Misty Creek." "I'll miss you terribly, but this is too important to pass up." Touched by his support of her career, Olivia agreed. In early February, she traveled to Denver with a collection of her best work, staying with the gallery owner's family. The exhibition exceeded all expectations. 4 paintings sold on opening night, and commissions were offered for more. Denver's small but vibrant artistic community welcomed Olivia warmly, introducing her to techniques and materials she hadn't encountered before. When she returned to Horizon Ranch 2 weeks later, Olivia was bubbling with excitement and new ideas. Blake greeted her at the station, lifting her into a spinning embrace that left them both laughing. "I missed you something fierce," he admitted as they drove home through the snowy landscape. "The house feels empty without you." "I missed you more," Olivia assured him. "Denver was wonderful, but it's not home. You're my home, Blake Young." That night, as they lay entwined in their bed, Olivia shared her most exciting news. "The gallery wants a permanent arrangement, Blake. They'll take whatever pieces I can provide, and they're willing to pay in advance for commissioned works." Blake's pride was evident in his smile. "I always knew you'd find your audience, love. Your talent is too great to go unrecognized." Spring arrived early that year, melting the snow and turning the Wyoming landscape into a riot of wildflowers and fresh green grass. As the land awakened, so too did Olivia and Blake's plans for their future. Construction began on their new home in April, with Blake personally overseeing every detail to ensure Olivia's studio would be perfect. In May, as the foundation was being laid, Olivia discovered another blessing on its way. She confirmed her suspicions with the town doctor before sharing the news with Blake one evening as they stood on the plateau, watching the sunset over their partially built home. "It will need a nursery," she said casually, sketching in the air with her finger. Perhaps there with the morning light. Blake looked confused for a moment before understanding dawned. "Olivia, are you saying?" She nodded, her smile radiant. "By Christmas, if the doctor's calculations are correct, we're going to have a baby, Blake." The joy that transformed his face was something Olivia knew she would paint from memory for years to come. Blake whooped loudly, the sound echoing across the valley, before gathering her in his arms with exquisite gentleness, as if she had suddenly become fragile glass. "A baby," he whispered, one hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Our child. Oh, Olivia, I love you so much." "And I love you," she replied, covering his hand with hers. "Our family is beginning, Blake. The family we'll build together just like our home." The pregnancy brought changes to their routine but strengthened their bond. Blake became even more protective, insisting Olivia rest frequently and hiring additional help for the ranch so he could spend more time with her. Olivia continued painting, finding that impending motherhood gave her art new depth and perspective. Their new home was completed in August, a beautiful two-story structure of local stone and timber, with large windows that captured the magnificent views from every angle. Olivia's studio was everything she'd dreamed: spacious, filled with perfect light, and equipped with the best materials Blake could procure. The nursery adjoined their bedroom, decorated with scenes from fairy tales that Olivia painted herself. Meadow creatures gamboled across one wall, while gentle forest scenes covered another. The ceiling became a night sky, stars glimmering with subtle gold paint that caught the light. "Our child will grow up surrounded by beauty," Blake observed as Olivia put the finishing touches on a tiny rabbit peeking from behind a painted tree. "And love," Olivia added, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their baby had just kicked forcefully. "So much love." In October, as Olivia entered her 7th month, Blake surprised her with news that he'd arranged for her mother to visit from Pennsylvania. Elizabeth Keller, now in her 60s, had been unable to attend their wedding due to ill health, and Olivia hadn't seen her in over 5 years. "I've been writing to her," Blake confessed, "sending her photographs of your paintings and our home. She's much better now and desperate to see you before the baby comes." Olivia's tears of gratitude and joy were all the thanks Blake needed. When Elizabeth arrived 2 weeks later, the reunion was emotional for everyone. Blake's thoughtfulness in bringing mother and daughter together only deepened Olivia's love for him. Elizabeth stayed through November, helping prepare for the baby and sharing stories of Olivia's own childhood. She got along wonderfully with Blake, often commenting on how fortunate Olivia was to have found a man who valued her talent as much as her heart. "Your father would have approved," Elizabeth told Olivia one evening as they sat by the fire. "He always said you had a special gift that the right person would recognize someday." On December 18, nearly a year after their wedding, Olivia gave birth to a son after a difficult but ultimately successful labor. They named him Benjamin Thomas Young Benjamin for Blake's father, Thomas for Olivia's. The baby had Blake's blue eyes and a dusting of Olivia's chestnut hair. "He's perfect," Blake whispered, holding his son for the first time, awe and terror mingling in his expression. "Absolutely perfect." "Of course he is," Olivia replied tiredly but happily from her bed. "He's ours." Benjamin grew into a curious, energetic child with his father's confidence and his mother's creative spirit. By his 2nd birthday, he was already showing interest in both ranching and art, following Blake around the property when allowed and watching in fascination as Olivia mixed colors in her studio. The young family thrived. Olivia's reputation as an artist continued to grow, with exhibitions not just in Denver but eventually in Chicago and even New York. Blake expanded the ranch's operations, implementing innovative breeding programs that made Horizon Ranch one of the most successful in Wyoming territory. When Benjamin was 3, Olivia discovered she was expecting again. Their daughter, Grace Elizabeth Young, arrived in the spring of 1883, completing their family. Grace was quieter than her brother, with thoughtful eyes that seemed to observe everything. Life wasn't without challenges. A severe drought in 1884 threatened the ranch's cattle, forcing Blake to make difficult decisions and work grueling hours. A gallery owner in Chicago attempted to cheat Olivia out of proper payment for several paintings, requiring legal intervention to resolve. Benjamin broke his arm falling from a horse when he was 6, and Grace developed a serious fever at age 4 that had them fearing for her life for several terrifying days. Through each crisis, Blake and Olivia's partnership only strengthened. They faced problems together, supporting each other's dreams while building their shared life. Their home became known for its warmth and hospitality, hosting community gatherings and providing shelter to those in need during difficult times. By 1887, 10 years after they first met, the young family was deeply rooted in the community. Benjamin, now 9, was the spitting image of his father, and already showing remarkable aptitude with horses. Grace, at 7, had inherited her mother's artistic talent, spending hours with Olivia in the studio learning to mix colors and capture light. Olivia's career had flourished beyond anything she'd imagined in those early days when the townspeople laughed at her paintings. Her work hung in galleries across the country, and commissions came regularly from collectors as far away as Europe. Yet she remained committed to capturing the beauty of Wyoming and its people, refusing offers to relocate to New York or Paris. "My inspiration is here," she always explained. "My heart is here." Blake's pride in his wife's accomplishments never diminished. Each new painting was celebrated, each success shared. The room where he'd first hung her work, now called the gallery room by the family, continued to display his personal collection, though many pieces had been sold for significant sums over the years. "Those vultures can have the ones you're willing to sell," he often said, "but these are mine." One evening in late summer 1887, as they sat on the porch of their plateau home watching the sunset, Blake took Olivia's hand, still slightly stained with paint from her day's work. "I was thinking about the day we met," he said softly. "How those fools in town were laughing at your paintings." Olivia smiled at the memory that had once been painful but now seemed merely distant. "And how you defended me before you'd even seen my work." "I knew they were wrong," Blake said simply, "and when I did see your paintings, it was like seeing into your soul, Olivia. I fell in love with your vision before I even knew I was falling in love with you." She leaned against his shoulder, comforted by his solid presence. "They laughed at my paintings, but you hung every single one in your home with pride." "And I've never regretted it for a moment," Blake assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Though I did have to build a bigger house to hold them all." Their laughter mingled in the twilight air, rising toward the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Inside their home, their children's voices could be heard: Benjamin practicing his fiddle, Grace singing along. The sounds of family, of love, of a life built on mutual respect and shared dreams. "I love you, Blake Young," Olivia said, turning to face the man who had believed in her when no one else would. "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away." "I love you, Olivia Young," he returned, his blue eyes as warm and true as they had been on the day they wed. "Thank you for painting our life with such beautiful colors." As night fell fully over Horizon Ranch, they remained together on the porch, surrounded by the legacy they'd created, a home filled with art and love, children who carried the best of them both, and a bond that had only deepened with each passing year. The laughter that had once been wielded as a weapon against Olivia's dreams had long since faded, replaced by the genuine joy that echoed through their days. In the years that followed, the young family continued to flourish. Benjamin eventually took over much of the ranch management, allowing Blake to focus on the breeding program he'd developed. Grace showed such artistic talent that by 16, she was studying with renowned painters who came specifically to Wyoming to work with Olivia's gifted daughter. Olivia herself became not just a successful artist, but a mentor to young women throughout the region who dreamed of expressing themselves through art. The studio wing of their home often hosted informal classes where she shared techniques and encouragement, remembering always how much Blake's early support had meant to her. Their love story became something of a legend in Misty Creek, the cowboy who saw the artist's true value when others could only laugh. But for Blake and Olivia, it wasn't legend. It was simply their life, built day by day with the same care Blake had shown hanging those first paintings, with the same attention to detail Olivia brought to her canvases. And in their bedroom, above the mantel where they could see it each night before sleep claimed them, hung that first painting of the lone rider in the storm, a reminder of beginnings, of faith in each other, and of the journey they'd taken from strangers to soul mates, creating together a masterpiece far greater than either could have achieved alone.